They work hard. They go to work every day for an organization that supports the work in the area. And they work at developing their spiritual side, these Ignatian values of for the greater glory of God, men and women forward with others. These mottos become reality in their lives. Community, that's probably, again, one of the real challenges for them. How do you do this day in and day out with a very small group of people, 4 or 5 companions? You know, it's great when everybody gets along, but usually there's a learning curve. This is the generation that never had to share a room as small children. So, social justice, again, is this expanding universe of they're doing some concrete work, but they begin to see the connections between that and the social, political dynamics of our society. We took them all down, or they came down to the Ignatian Teach-In in Washington, which is always the third weekend in November. It commemorates the Jesuits who were martyred in El Salvador. And at a place like that, they are just exposed to all the issues of our day: war, poverty, women's issues, just the political scene that we are dealing with, and how our faith calls us to do something to ameliorate the situation, make things better. It really changes year to year. It really changes according to their personalities and their desires and what God is doing in their lives. That's the Jesuit thing, that God is working in our lives directly. Now, as Lily Tomlin said, when we pray, when we talk to God, we call it prayer. When God talks to us, we call it schizophrenia. But there is a way in which the volunteer year is a way in which they open their hearts and their minds to God's action in their lives. And it's pretty fascinating to just be a part of and observe. Some come in with no spirituality at all. Some come in with a very set in stone, this is the way it ought to be, spirituality. And I think just the banging together at times of one another, they learn from one another. There's many ways to experience God. There's many ways to be Catholic. There's many ways to serve the poor. And some will go off and become, people who spend their lives directly serving the poor. Some will go off and try to become lawyers or administrators of institutions that try to change our society so that, someday we don't have to do this. That's the basic point. Someday I hope there is no need for Jesuit volunteers, but we're a long way from that. My bigger question is, why is it all women? Where are the young men? And why can't we encourage young men to do more of this, take a year off? But that's been constant throughout, that, the large percentage of females versus males. I think we have failed our young men. We have let a generation, 2 generations of young men spend their formative years playing video games. And my friends tell me, their daughter, she's 16 years old, she's up in the morning, she's had her run, she's showered, she's got her homework done, she's ready for school. The 15-year-old boy is, walking downstairs in the t-shirt he wore yesterday. You look in one ear, you see air on the other side. We don't challenge young men. And a lot of them are drifting. A lot of young men are not in good places. And I don't know if many of them are ready to do this the way the majority or, a larger percentage of young women are. That's one of the difficulties with the Catholic left for forever, that, the social justice people are all into social justice and the liturgical people are all into liturgy, and how do you bring the two together? The volunteers today are the people who grew up in a world of, conservative Catholic versus liberal Catholic. I think now things are coming together. I think this is going to be one of the great graces of Pope Francis, that we realize a lot of the energy wasted the last 25 years on those battles has to be more put into forming young people and helping them live the faith, understand the faith, experience the faith, live the faith in ways that link up to the gritty reality of our world, as one of our superior generals said in the Society of Jesus. And when you come in touch with reality, this is, I think, a Jesuit thing. When you become in touch with reality, you get in touch with God, and then transformation really happens. And that's what I hope happens in a volunteer's life and in a volunteer's year. And it's beautiful to behold, and it's a real privilege to be part of it. The spiritual but not religious is all over the place. You have, in my humble opinion, if a Jesuit can have a humble opinion, a lot of the spiritual but not religious stances are cop-outs. they're really neither spiritual nor religious. But I do respect the spiritual but not religious person who has serious problems with the institutional church or has had a really bad experience of a institutional church or institutional religion. And they can be quite called by God, or I see God in their lives, the way they throw themselves into the work for social justice. And then you really got to ask yourself, what's wrong with the church that they don't see the connection? Because it's not them, it's that the church isn't where it should be sometimes. They really are searching. They've had multiple disparate experiences of faith and religion in their young lives. Their families are all over the place. The one huge value is tolerance, which is good, but tolerance can become just an amorphous nothing. How do you really get them to commit and choose? And that's the other thing. The millennials, they really hold off committing. They want to leave all their options open. So to really be Catholic is to really be against something else and to be intolerant. So you really have a hard time navigating that those waters of religious affiliation and commitment. This life that St. Ignatius sort of envisioned was a life of being a contemplative in action, contemplating God and seeing where God is in our daily existence. And that should be something that's joyful as much as it confronts the gritty reality and the difficulties of life in our times. There's a lot of wonder in this year. There's a lot of thinking, and I've seen the fruits of it 5, 10, 15 years after the volunteer experience. That's what I mean, ruined for life. They live their life in a different way. This year goes very quickly. I often urge them to do 2 years because you're right out of school, you get into this in July and August, you kind of get to where you are by Christmas. By February, you're applying to law school. You're there for about 6 weeks. If you do 2 years, and that's why I think the International requires 2 years, there's a real possibility of this impacting your life in ways that are transformative forever.